Get started. Good afternoon. This is Transportation Committee Chair Deb Barber. It's Monday, June 14th, 2021. Before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to say a few things about how we'll conduct this meeting. As we know, Governor Walz has declared a peacetime emergency in response to COVID-19, and the Met Council has determined it's not practical or prudent to conduct an in-person committee meeting for reasons stated in the Governor's emergency executive order. Accordingly, Met Council members will participate in this meeting by phone or other electronic means, and this Transportation Committee meeting will be conducted under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. And with that, before we start the meeting, we need to establish whether there's a quorum. And Jenna, could you call the roll?
Chambliss. Councilmember Chambliss?
Here.
I know I saw you. Yep, thank you. Cummings?
Here.
Ferguson? Fredson?
Here.
Gonzalez?
Here.
Sterner?
Here.
Zirin? Councilmember Zirin? All right, and then Chair Barber.
Here. With that, I will call to order the meeting or the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee for June 14th, 2021. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Did anyone have any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, seeing and hearing none, if we can move on to approval of the minutes. And it's the minutes for the May 24th, 2021 meeting. Did anyone have any changes or additions? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved, Chair Barber. This is Sterner.
Moved by Sterner. Is there a second?
Second by Gonzalez.
Seconded by Gonzalez. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Ferguson? Fredson?
Aye.
Gonzalez?
Aye.
Sterner?
Aye.
Zirin?
Aye.
And Barber.
Aye. With that, the minutes are approved. And we're on to our reports. We have the TAAC report. We have David Finley joining us today.
Good afternoon, everybody. David Finley here, Chair of the Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee. It's nice to be with you this afternoon, evening. So yes, it's been a couple weeks since our meeting, June 2nd, the TAAC meeting on June 2nd. It was a very productive meeting. I'll run through some of the things we discussed and then talk a little bit about the work groups that we have going on. We had a presentation, a very concise and targeted presentation actually from the fare collection folks over there in terms of replacing fare boxes in many of the regular route buses and some other ones that are going to be on platforms. But I just want to say that it was extremely targeted. They definitely approached us with the know your audience perspective, and they did elicit a lot of very good direct feedback from TAAC members. So we're always happy to have presentations from folks that approach us about our subject matter. We heard from Meredith I'll
Click-Cotta.
butcher her last name. Click-Cotta. Thank you. Just don't tell Meredith unless she's here. She'll hate me forever. But
I've done it before too. So
we had an introduction of a pilot program that's going to be happening, a shared mobility program, which we're very excited about because it is it's an on-demand accessible transportation pilot program. On-demand is something that doesn't exist across the board in Metro Transit services, but this is the pilot program that we're excited to see, especially given that all of the vehicles in this pilot program are going to be accessible. So it's nice to see that that on-demand transportation is moving forward, especially in terms of accessible stuff. I'm sure you all know the TNCs have been struggling with this since their inception. So it's kind of nice to have Metro Transit working on an on-demand accessible transit option for folks with disabilities. Our legislative update, as I'm sure you could guess, was pretty sparse. Hopefully we'll know more today about what's going on with budget stuff up there at the Capitol, but I don't have much to say about the legislative update. We did get word also that Metro Transit is rolling out IRA services in the near future. IRA services, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you do know, it's a fantastic integration of technology. It's essentially a remote like guide for folks who are blind or low vision. There's a lot of access sites, as they dub them, around the Twin Cities area, and now we're working on making Metro Transit property access sites, so bus stops, light rail stops. That'll work fantastically for folks who are blind or are low vision. It's a great service for folks. So again, very excited that y'all are moving forward with that. We have 2 work groups or subcommittees, if you want to call them, in the works. Update on the priority seating campaign. They're moving along quite nicely. I think they're actually getting close to wrapping up. And that would essentially be marketing materials to inform the public about what the priority seating is for. This is something that I've updated you all on before. And then we have our first meeting of another work group that is kicking off at the end of this month in 10 days on the 24th. It's also with marketing and transit department over there, but this is a more broad work group that's looking at integrating accessibility into all they do over there. So I don't officially sit on these work groups, but I monitor both of them just so I can report back to you all, and also share updates at our meetings as well. But that is all I have for you today. Chair Barber and council members, happy to answer questions if you have them.
Great, thanks, David. Are there questions from council members? Councilmember Sterner.
I just was going to make a comment, thank you, Chair, about the committee, but I really got a lot out of the detailness with our blind committee members in that talk about the sound in that, where St. Paul and Minneapolis have different sound. Like in St. Paul, there was one council member that described the sound completely, and I mentioned like it's like a machine gun that goes. Well, if you go to Minneapolis, it will actually label what street you're on and doing that, and talked about like if you take the sounds away completely to hear traffic, and it was really a great detailed discussion, and I think it's something we need to look at that report to make sure we have uniform sounds in all of our one, kind of using the complete street model when it comes to sounds, that we are conscious about that. Then even there was some about one of the stops on the Gold Line was different than the other stops, and that made a big difference for our citizens as well. So I really learned a lot on the committee, and I think the information that comes from the committee is very, very valuable, and I'm pleased to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you, council member. Any other questions or comments from council members? I just have a quick comment. As people as you or people from your committee are going out and either participating and using like the on-demand pilot or the area app, we would love to hear feedback because that's how we make pilots and rollouts of these things go better. And so, yeah, certainly welcome that feedback, and we can make sure it gets to the right people at Metro Transit as these things are getting stood up. So thank you, and thanks for your report. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Chair Barber. I can assure you that we will give you more feedback than you want. I'm
That's
kidding.
what I
There's
like,
not
though.
too much feedback.
There's never too much. There's never too much. It's good. No, we appreciate it. Thanks so much, David. Have a good day. Next, we're on to MTS Director, and we have Amy Venowitz actually here for Nick, who is on vacation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just 2 items to report on today. First, you should all council members should be receiving an email this week that our 2021 travel behavior inventory household survey household travel survey is starting up data collection again this summer, and the first invitations to participate in the survey are expected to go out at the end of this week. You might remember that we transitioned to an every other year rolling survey format for the TBI as the acronym for this survey, with the last survey being completed in 2019. And in 2020, you received a number of presentations about the data that we received in that survey. So during 2020, we also added a special COVID travel survey, and then we slightly delayed the household travel survey that's going to be starting up this week. We're excited to get back on track with this survey. We are also adding small focus groups that will start meeting later in the summer. And those focus groups are meant to give us additional insight on the travel patterns of our regional BIPOC communities. So that's a big event starting up. And then also I wanted to make you aware that the Riverview Corridor draft purpose and needs statement is currently out for public comment through June 25th. There's also a virtual open house taking place next week on June 23rd. So if you have any interest in participating, or if you want additional information about the purpose and need, you can contact Heidi Schallberg, who is participating in that process too. And that's all I have for today.
Very good. Thank you, Amy. Are there questions from council members? Okay. Before we go on to Wes's, just want to make sure that get it the information out there that, as you know, Nick has been the MTS director for quite some time, but he is going to be moving over to Metro Transit as deputy general or deputy manager under Wes for in charge of capital projects. So one of the things is we'll be looking into recruiting and then ultimately filling the MTS director post in the near future. So with that, then I'll turn it over to General Manager Koistra.
Thank you, Chair Barber. We're really excited to have Nick join us here and excited to fill that position. It really will help us consolidate and organize our work around capital programs, which is getting larger and larger as we develop more services and ABRT and BRT and light rail services, and we just have a lot of capital work going on right now and addressing some issues with the capital management and the ongoing capital maintenance. So really excited to have Nick come over, and it's certainly our gain over here. I have a few items I want to talk about, but I'm going to try to do it real briefly because I know that we're largely responsible for the large agenda today, so I'll try to be quick. Metro Transit's had a COVID update. Metro Transit's had a total of 442 employees who have tested positive now for COVID. That's since the start of the pandemic. Since the last Transportation Committee meeting on May 24th, we've had 5 employees test positive. Beginning next week, I won't include the regular COVID reports unless something unusual happens. That's good to say, but in part we've been using this reporting to remind us all of the effect that the pandemic has had on our employees. And I'll just say again how appreciative I am of our frontline workers who have provided a tremendous and very public service to those who rely on transit for mobility, while many of the rest of us were isolating at home. So my thanks and appreciation for the frontline workers, and really something that I feel every day. In terms of operating hiring, I mentioned at the last meeting that we were needing to hire operators as we move towards returning to some services that we've set aside during the COVID period. There was a wonderful article about this in the Star Tribune over the weekend on Sunday. I believe it was on Sunday. Anyway, it was over the weekend. Our current staffing levels are sufficient to meet today's needs, but we're aiming to hire about 70 full-time operators by this fall, and this will allow us to keep up with the expected attrition as well as be well positioned for additional services as demand increases. On June 23 and June 26, we're going to hold a hiring event for people interested in becoming operators. This is similar to the one that similar to the one-day hiring event that we had back in June of 2020 that proved quite successful. There's been a lot of news about the 38th and Chicago intersection. The city of Minneapolis has made 2 attempts to open the 38th Street and Chicago Avenue intersection, and the intersection is not now open to auto traffic. Bus routes will remain on detours that have been in place since 2020. Metro Transit is not aware of any future attempts to open the roadway, and we will just continue to monitor the situation as the city of Minneapolis determines their next steps. As that relates to D-line construction, the committee members may recall that the Chicago and 38th intersection D-line station was removed from the 2021-22 construction plans. D-line construction is underway elsewhere on Chicago Avenue with an opening looking towards a 2022 service start. In addition to the detours in place at 38th and Chicago, there are several active detours on Route 5 due to D-line construction, and we really appreciate our riders for their patience as intermittent detours will continue across this year and into 2022 as crews complete work on the line. Committee members will hear about D-line construction progress in an arterial BRT update on June 28th. I believe all council members received an invitation to next Wednesday's Metro Transit Police Department promotion and graduation ceremony. I'm just reminding you of that. I believe you received an email last Tuesday with the deep details, but the event takes place next Wednesday on June 23rd, starts at 1 p.m. and it's being held at the Town and Country Club in St. Paul. And then finally, I wanted to call out Vince Pellegrin. Vince will be retiring, and his last day at work is coming up this week at Metro Transit. Vince is retiring after 41 total years in transit, 24 years at Metro Transit. He has served as the Metro Transit's first chief operating officer. He's helped the agency through multiple high-profile events, 9/11, 35W bridge collapse, strike, opening of rail lines, Super Bowl, COVID, and many others. And he's really been an industry leader in alternative technologies. He's helped introduce some of the country's first natural gas and hybrid electric buses while in LA and New York. And at Metro Transit, he helped improve fleet appearance, performance, introduced midlife repaint program, really set the bar higher for this organization, became the agency's first state designated emergency manager, and is really responsible for the incident command structure that we've used throughout the pandemic period. And Vince has been a really wonderful mentor to his staff at all levels of the organization. We're going to miss him tremendously. So a shout out to Vince, and we wish him a happy retirement. And I can tell by his mood lately around the office that it's headed that direction. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Wes. Are there questions from council members? Councilmember Sterner.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Chair and Mr. Koistra. Will there be an opportunity to have an event to thank Vince, celebration for him, either an informal or outside event now or in the future? For his incredible career, it just seems that warrants some kind of reception for him.
They are holding an event here for him on Wednesday. I can share that information with you.
Okay, I'd really appreciate that if you could. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. I was wondering, going back to Wes' comments about the staffing situation. Now with the state fair opening up, is that going to have any impact on, on our ability to provide services for that event?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Gonzalez, that's a really good question. We've had that discussion. We think we're in shape to be able to handle the state fair service. I think our concern is moving out into the September pick and December picks to make sure as we see services grow, that we're able to accommodate the service needs with the right number of operators. It's interesting because we were well overstaffed during the pandemic, and and had way more operators than what were required for the services, and we use those operators to add trips to busy routes to ensure social distancing and that sort of work. And then it's really now we're experiencing the same thing that many other employers rather are experiencing in terms of finding it very difficult to to find applicants for the work and to bring in new people. So we're going to try the new events, but we feel like we're in pretty good shape for the state fair and making those plans accordingly. But it's down the road that we need to plan for.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? I will just say, if you wouldn't mind passing this along in case people can't make it to the event for Vince, please tell him how grateful we all are, and probably several councils before us, of all of the work that he has done and his true dedication to Metro Transit. It's been well recognized and much appreciated. So
I'll be happy to do that. Thank you.
thank you. All right, so now we are on to our business for the evening. As you know, we have quite a bit to cover, so we're going to get rolling. There are no items on consent tonight, but we've got our first non-consent item is business item 2021-148, which is authorization to apply for non-urbanized area funds. And we have John Harper here, I believe, to present.
Yes, thank you, Chair Barber and committee members. This business item is simply a business item to allow staff to apply for a grant. MN.IT administers the federal grant, Section 5311 formula grant for rural area, and the Met Council applies for funding under this grant each year. They to support our Transit Link program in portions of the 7-county area that are considered rural, so the outlying areas. This is an annual grant that requires a resolution approved by the council. We are intending to apply for $1.9 million for 2022 and have that in the budget as a placeholder, and will amend the budget or adjust the budget as we get closer to an agreement with MN.IT for the actual amount that we will contract for. So the proposed action today is that the Met Council approve Resolution 2021-16, authorizing the regional administrator to apply for Section 5311 formula grants for rural areas funding for 2022 from the Minnesota Department of Transportation to support Transit Link service. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, John. Any questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-148.
Chambliss makes a motion to approve.
It's moved by Chambliss, and who was the second?
Zarin.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Zarin. Sorry, it was hard to hear. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin, and Barber.
Aye.
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 And with that, and we've got an aye from Zarin and an aye from Barber. With that, the motion passes. Thank you, John. Next, we're on to business item number 2021-99. It's the Gold Line Subordinate Funding Agreement number 2, and we have Chris Beckwith here to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I will be presenting this business item today. This is essentially for early utility relocation work for the Gold Line Bus Rapid Transit project. Just a reminder that the gold line runs between the cities of St. Paul and Woodbury, generally on the frontage road on the north side of I-94. So just about a year ago, this committee, Met Council actually approved the master funding agreement and subordinate funding agreement number 1 for this same work. So the master funding agreement sets kind of the framework, and the subordinate funding agreements allow the transfer of funds between the parties. So subordinate funding agreement number 2, which is what this business item covers, is a method of transferring the funds for the actual utility relocation work. So this is for the relocation of a fiber duct bank owned by Minnesota.IT, so MN.IT or Minute. The duct bank is located on the north side of I-94 and would conflict with the planned gold line alignment. So when we relocate utilities prior to the start of major construction, which is really anticipated to be next year, it really does reduce our project risks. One thing I wanted to mention is that MN.IT would be considered a sub-recipient of funds. And as such, we'd be operating under the Metro Transit sub-recipient monitoring procedures, which means that we would have to review their invitation for bid prior to that going out and then set a disadvantaged business opportunity enterprise goal. And the Office of OEO will actually be working with us on that process. So the DBE goal gets set prior to this being advertised. The funding is available through the existing capital grant agreement and is currently reflected in the council's authorized capital budget. And the proposed action is that the Met Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Metro Gold Line subordinate funding agreement number 2 with the Office of MN.IT in an amount not to exceed $2,497,770,035. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Very good. Thank you. Questions from council members? Councilmember Zarin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want the clerk in Minnesota.
You're breaking up a little bit. Do you want to?
IT.
Can you say that one more time, Ray?
Councilmember Zirin, you could always try calling in on just your phone as well, keeping your video on your computer, but using your cell phone for your audio.
We'll give him a minute, or you can type something in the chat and we can manage that for now too. What does MN.IT stand for?
That is, Madam Chair, that is Minnesota IT. So it's Information Technology Services. So that is a state agency, actually. So MN.IT, Minute for short.
Thank you. All right, any other questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-99.
So move.
Moved by Gonzalez, is there a second?
Fredson will second.
Seconded by Fredson, is there any other discussion?
Chair
Chairman
Barber, it looked like Councilmember Zarin had another comment about do they own the duct bank with it. So I don't know if that was answered. I know the MN.IT was answered, but I don't think that second comment didn't appear to be answered.
No problem. We're in discussion now, so we can get an answer for that. So, so the question is, do they own the duct bank?
Madam Chair, yes, they own the duct bank.
Okay. All right. Before we call the roll, I'm going to see Councilmember Zarin. Did you have any additional questions? Or you? What does it connect?
Madam Chair, so that is a good question. I know that the duct bank, it's not, there are some private uses of that duct bank, and several of the fiber ducts are also public uses. I think it is actually a significant backbone of their system, but I would say it connects to their entire state infrastructure. I don't know that I don't know the point A to point B on that, but I can certainly find some information on that.
Okay. All right, thank you from Councilmember Zarin. So, all right, I'll give one final, are there any other questions? All right, seeing and hearing none. Oh, no, Jenna can call the roll. Yep.
Yep. Chambliss? Chambliss?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Ferguson?
Aye.
Fredson?
Aye.
Gonzalez?
Aye.
Sterner?
Aye.
Zirin?
Aye.
I got you, Zirin. And Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Christine. Next, we're on to business item 2021-117. It's approval of Metro Orange Line Connection Bus Study Recommended Plan. We have Cyndi Harper here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Take
Welcome.
a moment to share my screen. Oh, looks like, there we go.
There.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. My name is Cyndi Harper. I'm the Senior Manager of Route Planning for Metro Transit in our Service Development Department. And today I'm here to provide an update on the Orange Line Connecting Bus Study. The last update was back in January when we reviewed the concept plan, and now staff has modified that plan based on the public feedback that we received. I will walk through the changes that we are recommending in conjunction with the opening of the Orange Line BRT later this year, and then finish with the business item requesting the committee approve the recommended plan for implementation. Here's a reminder of the study area and our 4 project goals. As only a few of the stations are going to have a park and ride, we expect many of the Orange Line riders will be using transit to access the stations. So high quality connecting bus service will be essential. Also would like to note that although the Orange Line itself travels to Burnsville, our study area ends at the Minnesota River. MVTA is the service provider south of the river, and they will be reviewing connections at the 2 Burnsville stations. Earlier this year, we asked our riders and other project stakeholders to weigh in on the changes proposed in the concept plan. We used several outreach strategies to get the word out and received about 600 comments. We heard strong support for the Orange Line itself, and stakeholders were pleased that the concept plan included coverage on all of the local branches of the Route 535, which will be replaced by the Orange Line. They also supported us restoring service on 2 routes that are currently have service suspended due to COVID, simplifying 4 routes so that all of the trips follow the same routing, and improving frequency on 7 routes. Areas of concern that we heard about included the proposal to eliminate 2 different parts of Route 515, one that runs along the west side of the airport and the other serving the VA Medical Center and Nokomis East neighborhood in Minneapolis, as well as eliminating service on 90th Street in West Bloomington. Some Route 539 and Route 597 supporters did not like us replacing what is currently a 1-seat ride with the transfer that adds travel time. In response to what we heard from the community, 7 routes were modified from the concept plan. This includes Route 7 will be adjusted in order to maintain the direct link between the VA Medical Center and 66th Street corridor during rush hour, which is when most of the people who use transit at the VA Medical Center are traveling. In the off-peak, those riders will need to connect via the Blue Line at the Mall of America. Also, a new route serving the 2 air cargo facilities at the airport. And this is actually an improvement over the service we have today. Currently, those customers are dropped on Longfellow Road and have to walk about a mile back to FedEx and UPS. And so this will be front door service. Also, new Route 534, which was proposed in the concept plan, will be extended, and which means we'll be able to continue providing service on 90th Street in West Bloomington. Other changes include reinstating Route 537, which travels on France Avenue between Southdale, Normandale Community College, and the Valley West Shopping Center. We're going to actually make this particular change, or we would like to, in August at the start of the semester for the Normandale College students. Also, bringing back Route 542 on American Boulevard, including new all-day service extending from the Mall of America to Highway 169. Southwest Transit's on-demand Prime service can provide connections across 169 to the Golden Triangle, jobs, and other Eden Prairie destinations. And also our Route 539 riders who currently have a one-seat ride will still need to transfer with Route 546, but we've been able to relocate that transfer so that it's happening at the 98th Street station for the Orange Line, which has a lot better level of passenger waiting amenities. Some of the other highlights that we've carried forward from the concept plan include that the Orange Line will run every day. Currently, the Route 535, which is going to be mostly replaced by the Orange Line, does not have any weekend service. Significant jump in the amount of service available, and this is actually outside of the Orange Line service hours. About a 20% increase overall and about a 30% increase on Saturdays. Also looking forward to having the Lake Street station at 35W reopen, which will once again provide connections for suburban residents to South Minneapolis jobs and for South Minneapolis residents to access suburban jobs. All of the Route 7 trips will be extended to serve Cedar Point Commons, which is the retail center at 66th and Cedar Avenue in Richfield. And we will be able to maintain a fast connection between the Orange Line and Normandale College that we currently have on today's Route 535. We'll be maintaining that as a 98th Street crosstown on the Route 539. And then finally, we will be continuing to provide east-west coverage as well. You may notice there aren't a lot of changes in the recommended plan in South Minneapolis and other places in the study area where there's a large number of low-income or BIPOC communities living. That is because these areas already have good connections with the Orange Line and a very high level of service, where nearly everyone has access to transit and about 70% of them have access to service every 15 minutes or better. This plan focuses on increasing service in places where there currently isn't a lot of service in order to improve access throughout the entire study area. This map illustrates that we will be connecting areas where frequent service already exists with better access to key suburban destinations through suburban service increases. The map is communicating two different things. The size of the dot is the total number of trips, and then the color represents the change. So the gray circles show areas with no significant increase in the number of trips. Blue circles represent the number of weekday trips as of our March pick, and the red represents the number of trips once these changes are implemented. The bigger the dot, the higher the number of trips. Much of the red dots, indicating an increase in service as a result of these changes, are located in the suburbs, but you'll notice that the largest dots are in South Minneapolis. The recommended plan improves access to jobs, educational opportunities, services, and other key destinations. There's nearly 10,000 students enrolled at Normandale Community College, of which approximately 40% are BIPOC. And there's also over 50,000 jobs in the 494 corridor between the Mall of America and Highway 169. On average, a resident in the study area can access about the same number of low-wage jobs within 45 minutes during the AM peak, but BIPOC residents gain access to more jobs than white residents do. All demographic groups see an increase of service to jobs in the midday, with the largest improvement experienced by BIPOC communities. This increase is most noticeable for lower wage jobs in the off-peak, which tend to be part-time. The recommended plan better distributes transit access to suburban jobs in Burnsville, near the Mall of America, along 494 corridor in Western Edina, and in southwestern Bloomington. The midday access to these areas is improved the most, as is evident by the green areas, the map on the right. It is important that we understand the impacts of these proposed changes, particularly on communities of color and those who are experiencing poverty. The left and the middle maps show where these groups are living within the study area. We want to pay attention to where the darker dots are. That's where either low-income or BIPOC communities are living. On these maps, one dot represents 50 people. The map on the right shows the net change in the number of weekly trips. Green means more trips and purple means less trips. Keep in mind that the green and the purple here are not just tied to demographics, but we also need to consider where those who rely on transit the most are living and where they want to travel in order to have a more complete picture. We have worked to get the word out about what we have changed since the concept plan and which changes will move forward. There was no formal public engagement period. At this point, we let everyone know what it is that we are asking the council to approve. Once again, though, our website, social media, and existing venues such as the Writers Club were key to the outreach, and the project was recently featured in an article in the Star Trib. There will be another major effort to make sure everyone knows what is happening as we get closer to the start date for these changes. Today's business item is that the Metropolitan Council approved the service changes in the Metro Orange Line Connecting Bus Study recommended plan for implementation with the opening of the Orange Line BRT project. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Cyndi. I have one quick question before we go. So the proposed action in the business item, also at the end of that sentence says, and related Title VI analysis.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to make sure we have the right one captured.
Yes, what the business item is correct. Madam Chair, thank you for mentioning that. The business item is correct. I will make sure to get that updated in the committee notes. The FTA does want us to be making sure that we are explicitly pointing out that we have done our Title VI homework here with these changes. So I will certainly be sure to update that.
Absolutely, thank you. Questions from council members?
Madam Chair.
No? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. More comment. Most of the Orange Line runs through my district, and I know that there's great appreciation for the really rigorous outreach that you did, and then the responsiveness to the comments that you received. It's changes, it's challenging. Not everyone is going to be happy, but I think that the cities that are affected and the residents that are affected are generally just really, really pleased with what you have done and what you're proposing and the excitement around the Orange Line. So I'm happy to see this, and it will be fun to see it launch. So thank you to you and your staff, both for the presentation, but for all of the work that went into this. I think it's been reflected in all of the responses and changes to the initial plan to the final product, and it's much appreciated.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Cummings, members of the committee, thank you very much. Appreciate hearing the positive feedback.
Yeah, I'm gonna add on a little bit. I think this is great because, some of these, these are areas that, like, I know from my district, we're in the South Metro, it's so important to have these connections to some of the destinations. And, perfect example is I have a recently graduated senior who's moving to Minneapolis, but going to school at Normandale. And the first thing he asked me was about the transit routes. And now I have a great story to tell him and a great way for him to get there. So it's fantastic news. Makes me very pleased. So thank you very much. So if there's no other questions, all right, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-117.
Cummings moves approval.
It's moved by Cummings. Is there a second?
Sterner,
Seconded by Sterner. Is there any other discussion?
Just ditto to all the other comments, Chair Barber. This is going to be great. It's a way of getting more public transportation to areas that don't currently have it. And, sometimes our formulas make it so that you have to have the demand first, but certainly with all the destinations, we can predict the demand. So this is a great opportunity to fill some gaps. I'll be looking forward to seeing it and also attending any events related to the opening.
Well said. All right, there's no other discussion? All right, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
and Zirin posted in the chat here. He's aye as well. Barber,
Aye. And with that, the motion carries. Thank you so much, Cyndi.
Great, thank you.
All right, next we are on to business item 2021-118. It's for the Heywood offices upgrade design services. And I'm seeing who's presenting.
Hi.
Oh,
Good
hi,
afternoon,
Molly.
Chair Barber and council members. My name is Molly Ellis. I am the Principal Project Coordinator with Engineering Facilities at Metro Transit. A bit of background on this project. With the completion of the Police Department addition to the Heywood campus in 2019, the next phase of campus planning is to renovate the original 1984 building known as the Heywood office. This upgrade will include bringing the building up to current building codes, fire alarm, life safety upgrades, replacing old mechanical system components for energy efficiency and enhancing building accessibility. Any post-pandemic improvements will also be incorporated into the long-term vision of this office space. Construction is anticipated to be phased into 3 or 4 separate packages over the next few years, depending on funding allotted through the CIP process. The MCUB goal for this project was at 15%, but the request for proposal committee determined to award to TKDA with 18.53% MCUB goal. And this project is meeting our Thrive goals through stewardship, equity, sustainability, through stewardship of our existing building systems, through interior renovation that incorporates sustainability, through upgrading those systems to be more efficient, and equity through right-sizing employee workspaces and amenities. The business item to present today is to approve the award and execute the design services contract to TKDA for the Heywood office upgrades project for $800,000. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-118.
Fredson will move it.
Moved by Fredson. Is there a second?
Sterner second.
Seconded by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin.
Zierens and I.
Thank you. And Barber.
Gonzalez is aye.
Got you, Gonzalez. Thank you. And Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Molly. Next, we're on to business item 2021-121. It's UBCEN's sole source for upgrading garage hardware. And we have Richard Paulson here. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Barber and council members. This afternoon, I have the following proposed action item that the Metropolitan Council authorized the sole source contract for UBCEN, the vendor for the bus locator system, for replacing garage hardware at all 7 facilities that house our buses. I have a brief presentation, give you an overview and a visual of how the operation for the system operates and the hardware to be replaced. So here on the left are the sensors, RFID sensors located through the garages. Each garage has 60 to 80 sensors depending on the size of the garage. This is the hardware that needs to be replaced. The sensors are end of life and our original equipment from when the system was installed in 2010. These sensors detect and triangulate RFID tags, which are mounted on buses, and that can be seen on the picture on the right. Then the end user product is a web-based map showing the location of each bus throughout the garage. Besides the location, other important information is displayed by the color of the bus, or by the icon of the bus. So Proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize, award, and execute sole source contract 21T148 with Ubisense American LLC in the amount not to exceed $1,259,428 for garage hardware replacement. And with that, can I answer any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-121.
Sterner with motion approval.
Moved by Sterner. Is there a second?
Fredson, second.
Seconded by Fredson. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Jenna, could you call the roll?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Zieren's an aye.
and Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
All right, next we are on to business item 2021-127. It's Metro Transit Agency Safety Plans, and we have John McQueen here. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and council members. I am John McQueen. I'm the Acting Director of Rail and Bus Safety at Metro Transit. I come to you today with business item 127, and we're asking that the Met Council adopt revision 2 of the Metro Transit Agency Safety Plans for Bus and LRT as required by 49 CFR Part 673. As background, you may recall that last summer, revision 1 of those plans was adopted by the Transportation Committee and the Met Council. Those regulations require an annual plan review, update, and adoption of those plans. So we're back to ask for the adoption of revision 2. The plan is basically unchanged from last year. There are primarily changes limited to updating organizational structure and current operating characteristics. And the only other significant update would be the FTA requires specific safety goals or targets to be a portion of that plan. We talked to those last year in broad terms that we would measure those 4 things. They are collisions, fatalities, injuries, and a state of good repair measure, which is mean distance between failures for both bus and rail modes. This year, we actually applied numbers in the plans for each of those. And to do that, we use numbers based on 2019. That was the last year that we had good numbers before the pandemic. The pandemic turned the whole ridership picture and route structures upside down. We're operating at a reduced level from that, so obviously we're meeting all those goals, but without a little more experience, it'll be difficult to use a much better number than the numbers that we have for 2019. So those are the numbers that we did put in the plans. The only exception to that being a measure of fatalities. And for measure of fatalities for both modes, our goal continues to be 0. We feel that to offer any number larger than that is really unacceptable on a number of levels. I guess to give that a little bit of perspective, in 2019 and 2020, both, we had 1 fatality on the bus side and 3 on the rail side. This year to date, we've had none. From a Thrive lens analysis, having these plans in place is a required step toward the continuation of FTA transit funding. There's no funding required for either of these plans. And in terms of known support or opposition, the Minnesota Department of Public Safety's Office of State Safety Oversight, which oversees the light rail operation, has approved the form and the content of the LRT plan as written, and there is no known opposition. So again, the action that we're asking for is that the Met Council would adopt revision 2 of the Metro Transit Agency safety plans for bus and LRT, including the safety target goals as required by 49 CFR Part 673. And with that, I'd answer any questions or comments.
Very good. Thank you. Are there questions or comments from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-127.
Chambliss, motions to approve.
It's moved by Chambliss. Is there a second?
Sterner, second.
Seconded by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Zirin is an aye.
and Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, we're almost halfway there through the business stuff. We're on to business item 2021-128, cubic ticket vending machine bill notes acceptor. We have Nick Yule here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and council members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, again.
Good. My name is Nick Yule. I'm the Senior Manager of Revenue Collections at Metro Transit, and I'm here with business item 2021-128. Proposed action for this business item is that the Metropolitan Council authorized the Regional Administrator to execute a sole source contract, that contract being 21P173, with Cubic Transportation Systems to provide new ticket vending machine bill note acceptor upgrade kits in an amount not to exceed $1.36 million. Little background, Metro Transit has about 150 ticket vending machines purchased from Cubic Transportation Systems over the years. These machines were first installed in 2004 when we opened the Blue Line, and we later added more of the same equipment when we launched North Star and the Green Line. Ticket vending machines issue tickets and recharge go-to cards. They accept cash and credit card payments. Over the past 17 years, Metro Transit staff have made many upgrades to our ticket vending machines to keep the equipment reliable and to meet ADA, credit card, and other requirements. Most of these upgrades are the result of obsolete components within the ticket vending machines, which usually means that parts and software are no longer available to repair or maintain these components. With a large initial investment in ticket vending machines and a high replacement cost, staff have done a great job of maximizing the ability to make incremental upgrades of key components within the ticket vending machines to continue to extend the life of this equipment. The current component requiring upgrade is the bill note acceptor in the ticket vending machines. This module accepts and verifies bills and coupons, identifying that a bill or coupon is valid and accepting it as payment. In 2019, as an example, TVMs accepted nearly $4.5 million in cash payments. So from a Thrive perspective, cash remains an important way that our customers pay their fare, and we want to continue to accept cash. The current bill note acceptor, known as the BNA5, will no longer be manufactured or sold and will no longer receive manufacturer support as of 2023, which means parts will become increasingly more difficult to find. Also at that time, we'll no longer be able to upgrade the software of these components if new bill variants are issued. So for example, if the Fed were to issue a new $20 bill with a new design, we would not be able to program the units to accept that $20 bill. The new bill note acceptor, known as the BNA6, is the latest model produced by the manufacturer, Crane Payment Innovations, and is expected to receive support for at least 10 years. Because these units integrate with the Cubic ticket vending machines and must be programmed to work with the machine software, which is also developed by Cubic, this will be a sole source procurement. When we attempted to work directly with Crane Payment Innovations, as well as inquired with other distributors of these pieces to see if we could work with them, we were instructed that only Cubic could develop the hardware and software interfaces to allow the new units both to physically fit inside the ticket vending machines as well as to integrate with the software. That's why this is a sole source. That said, staff did do an independent cost analysis based on previous purchases of similar equipment, and we found the price to be fair and reasonable. In addition, once the work is completed, we will have the opportunity to source replacement parts competitively in the future. Thank you for your time today, and I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from council members? All right, I'd say seeing and hearing none and entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-128.
Sterner would move the motion.
Moved by Sterner. Is there a second?
Second by Gonzalez.
Seconded by Gonzalez. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Jenna, would you call the roll, please?
Chambliss, Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Aye.
and
Zirin
Barber.
is an aye.
Aye. And with that, the motion carries. Thank you, Nick. Right, next, we are on to business item 2021-132. It's Southwest LRT Systems Construction Change Order, and we have Jim Alexander here. Welcome.
Hello, Madam Chair. I have a business item in 2021-132. This relates to our systems contract with Aldridge Parsons joint venture. So the proposed action that I'm presenting to you all tonight is that the Metropolitan Council authorized the regional administrator through the Southwest Light Rail Transit Council authorized representative to negotiate and execute a change order for contract 17P000 with Aldridge Parsons, a joint venture, in an amount not to exceed $8,972,046.95 for up to 3 years of storage for the manufactured light rail system components. So, Madam Chair, the background on this is that you may recall we have talked earlier this year about delays that we have with the civil construction contract, and I'll actually be providing an update on that to the council later this month. But due to that delay, we need to figure out what we're going to do with the systems contract, and so staff looked at a number of options of how we could address this issue, because essentially the systems contract has to wait for the civil contract to be done before, or at least segments need to be done before the systems can get out to the field to install equipment. So we looked at fully suspending the contract and all the work. We said that's probably not a solution, because we'd have to re-procure that. We feel like we have a good fair price on the overall systems contract. The other is to delay production of manufactured items. That is something we did look at, but some of the manufacturers would say, you know, given the market conditions, they weren't interested in delaying production because they have other clients that they're making deliveries to. The others continue production on the original schedule and have the materials stored by the manufacturer or the vendor. That didn't really work for most of the vendors, so they don't have the space for that. And so we also looked at the idea of continuing production and taking delivery and having that storage done locally. And that's what this business item is about. And so this pertains to the various equipment on the systems contract at traction power substations. We have 20 of those. Overhead contact systems, so that's the poles, the wiring, all that equipment associated with that element. The signaling system is another component, and the communication systems and tunnel system components. So we have quite a bit of materials and equipment that are being manufactured for this project, and it takes some space, and it takes conditioned space to do that. And that on top of a very, very tight market for real estate in terms of finding a location to store this. We need plus over 150,000 square feet, and it needs to be maintained, as I indicated. It needs to be air conditioned, and you need to have support in that facility, because this equipment does need to be monitored to make sure it's going to be in good running condition once it gets installed out in the field. And so we made arrangements through the systems contract to look at a change order to handle this locally. And so that's why I'm presenting here tonight to move this change order along. Maybe I'll pause there, or if there are any questions. Or maybe I should mention the contract will continue to have a DB goal of 12%, although I should mention that the APJV contract is currently a little over 16% right now. So they're doing pretty well, and we continue to monitor that with OEO. So, Madam Chair, I'll be glad to take any questions. I think there was a question that came through the chat.
Great, thank you, Jim. It said, what selection of a local contractor could have served us better, since a local contractor would own property?
Well, good question. Well, the type of equipment that we have, keep in mind that under the Aldridge Parsons joint venture, they have contracts within that contract to supply. So for example, we have traction power that's provided by Siemens. We have overhead catenary that's supplied by Valmont and Miller-Burned. Signaling system is by Diverging Approach. Communications is called Collins Aerospace. And the tunnel systems are by Eaton and Harris Mechanical. So those contracts are already set in place for them to provide this equipment. So it isn't necessarily we could go out for separate procurement on that, because that's part of the package that we essentially purchased with the bid back in 2019 under Aldridge Parsons, a joint venture.
Okay, thank you. Then Councilmember Zarin had an additional question. He wants to know, was storage included in the original bid?
Madam Chair, council members, it was not. This is coming up as a result of our delay that we have on civil construction. If we did not have that delay, we would not be looking at this storage. It would be up to the contractor to kind of figure out their supply chain and be able to deliver this equipment. But given that we have a delay, we thought it was prudent to move forward on this approach.
Chair
Thank you.
Barber.
Yes, Councilmember Chambliss.
My question is, are we able to keep and reuse this storage facility?
Madam Chair, council member, we will not. This is going to be on a lease arrangement. We did look at options. We actually partnered with Hennepin County to see if there was something available. We also looked internally to see if we had some facility. Unfortunately, we do not. We need to occupy space with equipment beginning August 1. So there really isn't time to build a new facility for this. If we had that time, that was something that we'd certainly look at. But we really tried to scour all options here, and this is where we've landed.
Okay, and one more question. Is there an option to purchase, or would there be any benefit getting a facility looking forward for situations such as this, so we don't get hit with a big $9 million expense? Just thinking about recycling.
Madam Chair, council member, that was on our minds as well. That's where we were trying to look to see if there's some existing facility within even Met Council or the Hennepin County group, and we just didn't have that available. The real estate market is really tight right now, and you know, this site is located in Golden Valley. We looked within the metro area. We looked outside the metro area. It's really a kind of a tough situation in terms of your initial question. You know, we'd store equipment for this. Hopefully, when Blue Line comes up, this situation doesn't come up and storage is needed. This is really kind of a one-time deal for this project.
And Jim, maybe elaborate a little bit just to clarify why we need something with space of the size of stuff that we're storing and why we have limitations within Met Council facilities.
Yes, Madam Chair. Well, it needs to be large enough, over 150,000 square feet. You need to have overhead doors to be able to get the equipment. And some of the costs for this change order to make some modifications to a facility we're looking at to do that. And it's just, there's a lot of things going into this. So it's not necessarily just a lease, but it's also the upkeep of the facility. There will be individuals monitoring this equipment. We'll have dehumidifiers to make sure the environment is good. There just really isn't anything within Met Council that can accommodate the size. We have 20 traction power substations. We have a number of tunnel systems. These are fairly big houses, and the components inside them need to be conditioned. They're all electronics. And so it isn't, you can just store them out in the backyard type thing. You really need a single large facility to accommodate.
Thank you. Additional questions, Councilmember Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really more of a comment. I think, you know, we would, of course, have hoped that we wouldn't be in this situation, but this is the reality in which we find ourselves. And I think that this is a prudent thing to do, given where we are. I think we've all seen issues with supply chain delivery, getting materials, and to not have this equipment available when we need it, where we need it, could be many, many, many more times cost-wise than it will be to have this available when we are ready to use it. So while it's a challenge, I think that again, I would thank Jim and his team for exploring all kinds of alternatives, and this one certainly looks like the best by far, given the situation that we're currently in.
One more question, Chair.
Councilmember Chambliss?
Yeah, so do we have any other domino effects due to the delay that we'll be looking at coming up the pike?
Madam Chair, Council Member, that's a very good question. Yes, there will be. In fact, we still have issues related to the Secant wall and the Kenilworth Tunnel that I spoke of earlier. You recall that we had the big change order on the quarter protection. Both those elements have schedule impacts to the civil construction and systems, and will be likely facing costs associated with delay of both of those contracts, and there will be costs associated with that. I don't have those numbers yet. We're in the process of looking to what we call a rebaseline of the civil schedule, and to get that set, and then we'll have systems reestablished, and then we'll be negotiating a settlement, if you will, with both contractors to get kind of a reset with the schedule and the cost. So I will provide a little more update on that for you all when I present the quarterly update later this month to the full council.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Or I want to give Councilmember Zarin a second if he wants to has anything he wants to add in the chat. Okay, I think then he has a comment. It's a lot of money, which, yes, we agree. All right, we are, so with that, at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-132.
Cummings moves.
Fredson, I move approval.
It's moved by Cummings, seconded by Fredson. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none. Jenna, could you call the roll?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin. Zirin?
He says yes in the comments.
There you go. Thank you. And Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Jim. And next we're on to business item 2021-133, North Star Corridor Funding Agreement with the state. And we have Ed Petrie here. Welcome, Ed.
Good afternoon, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Great. Sorry about that. Chair, committee members, Ed Petrie, Director of Finance with Metro Transit. I'm here to present business item number 133, North Star Corridor Funding Agreement with the State of Minnesota Department of Transit. This is very similar to the agreement that John Harper presented earlier. This will be the North Star side of it. This agreement is with the State of Minnesota Department of Transportation for calendar year 2022, and it'll provide MN.IT 8.05% funding for public commuter rail service in Sherburne County, Minnesota for calendar year 2022. The difference between this one and John's is that MN.IT actually provides state funds to the council for MN.IT operations. The balance of the funding, as I presented in many of the different operating grant agreements, is it's 8.05% of it comes from MN.IT. The other 8.05 comes from Sherburne County. And then there's two other pieces. The state of Minnesota provides 41.95%. And then Hennepin and Anoka County provide the other 41.95% to give us the balance total of 100%. With this agreement, MN.IT will provide to the council grant funds, state grant funds, to fund 8.05% of the commuter rail net operating costs, up to $1.9 million for calendar year 22 for North Star Commuter Rail. One of the items within this grant has been, the council have the ability to bill MN.IT on a monthly basis to maintain positive cash flows. And Madam Chair, the recommendation is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to enter into an agreement with the State of Minnesota Department of Transportation MN.IT for calendar year 2022 to provide funding for public commuter rail service in Sherburne County, MN.IT or Minnesota for an amount up to $1.9 million, and then execute the attached resolution of the governing body from the Metropolitan Council to enter into an agreement with the State of Minnesota Department of Transportation for calendar year 22. And with that, Madam Chair, I would stand for any questions. And I believe there was one question.
Yeah, so far Councilmember Zarin has a question. Go ahead. Councilmember Zarin. Councilmember Zarin's question is this any different from any other funding agreements that were previous?
Okay, Chair, committee members, good question. This is consistent with how North Star has been funded. Since the inception with North Star, it has been 41.95% state, 41.95% counties, and then the piece outside of the transit taxing district has been Sherburne 8.05, MN.IT 8.05. So the funding structure for North Star is consistent.
Thank you. Okay, Zarin moves this business item 2021-133. Is there a second? And then we can come back for other questions if there are questions. Is there a second?
Fredson will second.
Seconded by Fredson. So is there any other discussion? Or did anyone have any other questions? All right, seeing and hearing none. Jenna, you can call the roll.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zarin, we see you're a yes, and Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Ed.
And Madam Chair, I apologize for waking up my dog.
No worries. My cat has walked across the screen during these meetings, so we're good to go.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next we're on to business item 2021-134. It's to extend the University of Minnesota revenue contract, and I believe we have Lisa Anderson, or we have Dustin Christini.
Madam Chair, my name is Dustin Crisini. Members of the council, per the agenda, I'm bringing forward business item 2021-134 regarding extensions for the University of Minnesota revenue contracts. Today, we're asking the Metropolitan Council to authorize the regional administrator to execute the following extensions for the 3 University of Minnesota agreements with the following terms. The UPass agreement, which is the pass for students, extending the terms from August 31, 2021 to August 31, 2022. The University of Minnesota Metropass agreement, which is the pass program for staff and faculty, extending the terms October 1, 2021 to September 31, 2022. And the University of Minnesota Campus Zone Pass, which is the pass for the 3 Green Line stops on the West Bank for students, faculty, and staff, extending the terms August 31, 2021 to August 31, 2022. Just a bit of background on these programs. These are our long-standing discounted fare programs at the University of Minnesota for their students, staff, and faculty. Just a brief overview of these passes and the costs for the participants in these programs. The UPass, which is the pass program for their eligible students, provides a semester-long unlimited rides for $114 per semester. University of Minnesota Metropass is a pass program for their eligible staff and faculty that provides unlimited rides for $83 per month. I would like to note that the $83 per month per pass is across all participating organizations in the Metropass program. It's not just for the University of Minnesota. And the Campus Zone Pass, which offers unlimited rides between the 3 Green Line stations on the West Bank, is $8 per semester. I would like to point out with this program, the University of Minnesota does pay for these passes, but provides them free of charge to any interested students, faculty, or staff who would like to obtain one. These programs are an important source of rides for Metro Transit, so I'd also like to touch on a brief overview of the 2020 ridership and the revenue numbers for these programs. The UPass in 2020 saw 700,000 rides and $2.7 million in revenue. University of Minnesota Metropass program had 205,000 rides and $887,000 in revenue, and the Campus Zone Pass had 40,000 rides and $16,000 in revenue in 2020. We know these numbers are a bit lower than previous years due to COVID, but we are hopeful that they will return to pre-pandemic numbers. So to recap our action today, we are seeking approval on these time extensions so we can continue these programs. We value our partnership with the University of Minnesota, especially as they plan to return to in-class learning in the upcoming 2021-22 academic year. Again, I thank you for your time, Madam Chair, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-134.
Chambliss moves approval.
Moved by Chambliss. Is there a second?
This is Fredson, I'll second.
Seconded by Fredson. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Zierens and I.
and Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Dustin and Lisa.
Thank you,
All
Madam
right,
Chair.
absolutely. On to our last business item. We're business item number 2021-144. It's to amend the Orange Line Design Project. We have Derek Berube here to present.
Hello, Madam Chair and council members. Thanks for sticking with the agenda and getting to me finally. It was the last business item on the busy day today. So, as mentioned, I'm here to present business item 2021-144 to amend the Orange Line Design Construction the design contract with HNDB corporations. Just a little bit of background on the reason for the ask here is the Orange Line project through construction is hit a few different items that we'd like to address while we're in construction. And I want to remind everybody that the original contract for this was executed in January of 2016. So the contract is over 5 years old and quite a few things have changed during that time. A few of the big items I'd like to highlight is that during the design and into construction or after the original design construction was complete, the ticket vending machines that were originally planned for here were switched from the big cubic machines that you see on our LRT stations to the smaller Flowbird machines that people see quite a bit of in our system on the BRT lines. And in doing so, it allowed us to put 2 ticket vending machines in the location of just 1 large cubic machine. So to do that, we need to run additional conduit to those locations. So the design team is looking at ways that we can make that happen with our construction. And lastly, another item is to provide the opportunity for a shovel-ready operator restroom at the Orange Line's terminus down in Burnsville. Our plans are ready to incorporate that, but what this will do is it'll allow us to get final designs on the shelf for the day that funding becomes available to build that restroom facility down there for our operators. And as I mentioned earlier, the notice to proceed for the original contract was back in January of 2016. It has been amended a couple times, and this one is to amend it and increase the value an additional $319,138. One thing that we're also excited about is over 40% of the increase of this action is going to be performed by DBE companies. And the original goal was set at 15% for this project. HNTB had a commitment of 15.9% and are currently over that at 16.32. And with this amendment, it actually brings it just shy of 17% overall. So just wanted to lay out some of that information, and the funding for this is already accounted for in Council Authorized Project 62405. And if there's any questions, I'll stand for them.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from council members?
Council member Zieren here.
Councilmember Zarin.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question. You know, having a toilet facility brings dignity to our operators. We already have, as our Mr. Koistra spoke earlier, we're having issues recruiting, retaining operators. Having a toilet in a spot that brings dignity to the job is very important. How was this missed on the previous design, and how is the new design going to continue to bring that dignity?
Chair and council members there. And so the original design did not miss the facility itself. We actually have all the utilities in to build the station's restroom. Again, we didn't have the design for the station's restroom itself because we were working through agreements with both MN.IT and the city of Burnsville at the time. So it was thought of, the utilities are there, the sanitary sewer is there, the water main is there. It was just we weren't ready to pull the trigger back in 2016 to get that incorporated into the design, and we are ready to do that now.
Thank you. All right, any additional questions or comments? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-144.
Cummings moves approval.
It's moved by Cummings. Is there a second?
Zarin seconds.
Seconded by Zarin. Is there any other discussion? Riva, I see your hand up. Is that an old one or new?
Yeah, it's old.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? All right. Seeing and hearing none. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Aye.
and Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Derek. That finishes our business for the evening, and thank you all for getting through all those business items so quickly, but yet still asking good questions throughout, so it's much appreciated. I would say as we look at this, that I think it would be good for business item number 3 to go non-consent to the council, so it goes through several of our other colleagues' districts, so it'd be good to familiarize people with the various connections to the Orange Line, and then business item number 8 going non-consents. Does everyone agree with that? All right. Hearing very quiet noise, I'm going to say that we all are in consensus with that. So now we'll move on to our information items. The first one is travel demand management. We have Cole Huniker. Welcome, Cole.
Thank you and good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, again.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm here today to talk about a study that we're hoping to kick off this fall to talk about travel demand management. And I'm going to go through what the study is about. And we're still in the procurement phase, so we're still working through the scope of work. But we thought it would be a good time to make you all aware of it because it's going to be a fairly collaborative effort with a lot of regional stakeholders involved. Next slide. I wanted to start by just talking about what is travel demand management. It's a fairly wonky term, so talking about what it means can have a lot of different perspectives. We pulled 2 definitions here. The Federal Highway Administration defines it as managing demand is about providing travelers, regardless of whether they drive alone, with travel choices such as work location, route, time of travel, and mode. So in the broadest sense, demand management is defined as providing travelers with effective choices to improve travel reliability. I think the second one is almost more of a plain language definition. I pulled it from Wikipedia, it's sourced from somewhere else, but the application of strategies and policies to reduce travel demand or to redistribute it in space or in time. And that's a really important element because as we've seen recently, there's a lot of ways to look at travel demand and particularly where it's distributed in space, or I would even add cyberspace as another emerging consideration in travel demand management. So next slide, please. So when it comes to what are travel demand management strategies, I just pulled together a few examples here of things that have been explored either in this region or in other regions. So things like congestion pricing, managing parking supply. We're seeing a lot more in this region of information technology, traveler information, making people more aware of what the costs potentially are of their choices, but also anything that encourages transit, biking, walking, or carpooling is generally considered a travel demand management strategy. And then, of course, telework is a huge potential one that we've experienced and have a lot more experience with in the last year. So just a few examples here. It's not an exhaustive list. Next slide. So we're proposing to do a travel demand management study, and the question always comes up: why do we do transportation system studies? We listed on the left or on the right here 4 primary reasons why we do studies on our transportation system. Oftentimes we're doing studies to evaluate the performance of the system or system elements. So looking at how well are we getting a return on our investment, or how well are certain elements of our system performing, and where could they potentially be improved. In other instances, we might be prioritizing investments across the region based on expected future performance. So you might think about studies that we've done where we say, where should we build the next set of MinPass lanes, for example, or the next set of BRT lines. So we're really trying to anticipate where the most demand will be, and we need studies to help inform that. In some instances, we're setting or evaluating strategic direction. So we're really trying to establish, a framework like goals or objectives, and trying to lay out policies that might help us achieve those goals and objectives, and leaving the more detailed efforts to further on efforts down the road. And there's even times when we're studying emerging topics. One that we're doing right now is looking at electrification of the vehicle fleet, private vehicle fleet, and seeing how that might, different scenarios that might lead to that. So a lot of different ways we can look at transportation and study it and try to learn more and improve how we prioritize. And really, this study hopes to achieve all of these different pieces, but specifically for travel demand management. So we're going to be looking at travel demand management across all of these different ideas. Next slide. We have done some work on TDM in the past. We did a travel demand management evaluation and implementation study in 2010. It had a lot of impacts in terms of creating a innovation funding category in our regional solicitation. And since that time, we've actually selected 23 projects for over $5 million of federal funding to do TDM innovation. One project example that I have there is that it actually helped fund the Metro Transit app that you are probably familiar with, and that's undergoing an upgrade right now. It also led to some improved coordination and marketing of TDM tools across providers. We have a lot of partners in TDM implementation, including our transportation management organizations, and so trying to get a consistent brand, or at least some consistency in the branding across those different partners was important, and we've achieved some of that. And there was a number of strategies that have been explored as well, with variable message signs and things like the parking cash out program for the ABC ramps, which was a pilot program that the University of Minnesota and MN.IT undertook. So while that study did some things, it wasn't as comprehensive as what we're proposing to do this time around. It was fairly focused on some of the existing TDM programs that we had in place. And the other limitation was that it didn't address things that at the time were emerging or hadn't really shown up to be major issues. Uber and Lyft weren't even off the ground yet. We had just implemented Nice Ride at the time, so that idea of shared mobility wasn't a substantial concept that was prevalent in society. We also didn't have a significant MinPass system plan in place, or at least we didn't know how it was going to be funded at the time. And I put telework on there because nobody really could have predicted what would have happened during the COVID-19 pandemic and how that would shift perspectives on telework. There was also limited guidance for implementing some conceptual strategies that were identified. And I think our expectation this time around is we put more meat behind some of the strategy recommendations that'll come out of this study. Next slide, please. There's also, so that work is actually 11 years old, and I think in addition to some of the things I mentioned, there's some trends and policies that have emerged in regional transportation that are important and that necessitate a refresh in our TDM. And one of those is that we have a regional congestion management process. We also prioritize highway mobility projects, and we often discuss the importance of TDM in a first step strategy. It's considered to be a high benefit, low cost strategy in most instances. If you can take people off the road by shifting their travel from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. out of the peak period, you can reduce congestion without making major infrastructure investments. And so while we have it as identified as a top strategy, there isn't a whole lot of guidance for, say, MN.IT or for counties that are looking at roadway projects to really understand how should they be looking at TDM in detail. What are the different elements of it, and what collaboration should they be exploring? And so that's an implementation and a process that needs more guidance. We also just, as I mentioned, there's a lot more technology and it's evolving rapidly, and there's a lot of opportunity for new ideas and new concepts in travel demand management, and making sure that we aren't missing something that, say, another region is doing that we should be considering here. Of course, I don't have to speak to this in much detail, but the telework phenomenon is created both a huge opportunity and a huge learning experience for us in terms of what things like travel demand management can do. Most of you probably experienced in the last year a lot less congestion than in previous years, and there's that idea in and of itself really highlights the power and the potential of travel demand management. And the last bullet here isn't necessarily new, but that the region is heavily investing in the expansion of transit, bike, and managed lane systems. And they're starting to get to the point where they're being built out. You know, back in 2010, we hadn't even opened the Green Line yet, and now, you know, we're close to having 4 metro lines open and a number of other BRT corridors. So really an opportune time to look at how we can take advantage of those major investments with TDM strategies. Next slide. Wanted to also note that this was also before Thrive when it did the last TDM study, and we've certainly, both with Thrive and even since Thrive was adopted, equity and climate have emerged as really important regional focuses since that last study. And we know that not all TDM strategies are equitable or considerate of all users. And so this study will make sure that every aspect of the study has an equity lens to it that considers how the benefits are borne by all users, and making sure that there's an equity consideration there. And also climate concerns about what the impacts are to vehicle miles traveled with our system, and long-term how we contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. I had a chart here on the right just to illustrate, you know, one point here, that this is a nationwide survey, that the percentage of households by income who switched to telework because of the COVID pandemic, you can see those who were able to telework tended to be predominantly higher wage employees. And so those that are lower income, you know, we don't want to forget that they still had, majority of them still had to travel, making sure we don't put all our eggs in one basket, for instance, on telework. So just one idea there, but that will be fleshed out much more as the study advances. Next slide. And we wanted to talk about the engagement approach for this study as well. And then I'm going to move into just a really high level discussion of the work scope and the elements. We're going to do a number of different engagement opportunities. We are looking for the consultant that proposes on this to propose some innovation within their engagement. So using things like stakeholder interviews, possibly some focus groups. We know we have a lot of partners in TDM, whether it's the TMOs or cities that do land use planning and parking management, counties that do highway planning, or MN.IT that does highway planning, all the transit providers. And so we're looking at getting at that in a multitude of ways, particularly if you think about how many different stakeholders might exist within each of those groups. Trying to get business impacts as well. So working with developers or large corporations, we're going to need a lot of tools to reach that wide of an audience. And so we are looking for the consultant to propose a variety of tools, but we lay out these as possible examples for how they'll engage. Just know that we're planning to use as many tools as possible to make sure we get a broad representation. And I wanted to note the 5th bullet here, that we're actually working with procurement and our communications department to have a separate contract. For those of you who aren't familiar with transportation planning consultants, we tend to get a lot of similar proposals from planning consultants that work a lot in this field regularly. And they don't always have the most specialized ability to work with community organizations, or they don't have those connections established as well as others in the community might. And so we're looking to contract separately with a consultant that will help facilitate better community organization input, particularly targeting racially and economically diverse input, and using the trusted advocate model that Metro Transit has had for many years. And so that'll actually be a separate contract, but it'll be supportive of this overall effort. And it's a way for us to ensure that we can help work directly with the engagement consultant and not have it be a sub consultant of a larger project. We think it'll be really effective for us building that input process and making sure that we maintain those relationships long term. And just note here that the engagement we expect to primarily help shape our framework and our strategic assessment. So the next slide, please. So the study tasks here really lay out what we're hoping to accomplish here, looking at existing conditions, and this is where a lot of the survey work will come into play, you know, talking to cities, businesses, developers, property owners about what do they view as TDM strategies, how much do they do today in terms of trying to maximize the use of alternative modes or other TDM strategies, and then looking across the country and in instances that we can, looking across the world for some really good ideas for best practices. What are some strategies that we could be doing as a region that are observed in other regions as being very effective? And so we take that, then we develop a TDM framework in which we say, here's what we hope to accomplish with TDM strategies. Maybe it's something like reducing VMT per capita. Maybe it's something like reducing greenhouse gas emissions. There's a number of different opportunities that could emerge from that. And they'll, of course, be shaped by Thrive and our transportation policy plan. We take all of that and then we evaluate both what we're doing today, what some opportunities for improvement are, maybe from what we're learning from peers or similar assessments, and there's a strategic recommendation from the consultant about where we should head as a region. They would consider things like implementation, ability, cost, the potential impact of these strategies, and present all of this information in a variety of workshops to potential stakeholders and get their broader feedback. And they would end with an implementation plan, you know, probably highlighting the highest priority strategies and what the next steps would be for those strategies. Next slide, please. So we didn't want to go into a ton of detail on the scope of work, but I did want to highlight one thing that is perhaps unique. I've never seen it done in a TDM study in the US in my time, but we do realize there's a lot of uncertainty in travel right now, so that, you know, choosing strategic direction just based on an assumption about the future is really difficult, because the future is more uncertain now than I think it's been in a long time. And so we're considering a scenario approach here where we have different underlying assumptions about what might happen in the future, regardless for what we do in TDM. But then having the consultant say, how might your strategic recommendations change if these underlying assumptions were assumed to be true? So one example might be, what if telework were to continue at, unlikely to be at COVID-19 rates, but at higher rates previous to the pandemic? Would that change how we approach TDM overall? It might mean that we have more travel during the off peaks and for non-work than we had before. And so your approaches certainly change. Another one you have to consider is, how does transit demand shift over time? We've already seen a shift away, I think, from peak period heavy demand for transit and more of a balanced approach across the time span. And historically, TDM has focused on peak period travel demand management. And so I think we just need to make sure that we're open to the idea that that could be different in the future, depending on what happens. And so looking at different scenarios and how our strategic approach might change into those underlying assumptions. And I would say that those are examples. We're going to use the study to have stakeholders help us define these scenarios moving forward. Next slide. And in implementation plan, as I said, they're more descriptive actions about the next steps to be taken to advance strategies. Prescriptive in nature, not prescriptive, I mean, but descriptive about next steps. In some instances, strategies may recommend that we have to do additional work in order to implement a strategy. You know, we may even be looking at things like what state laws need to be changed to make sure that cities or counties can implement the types of strategies that we think would be really impactful. And so there's obviously going to be different paths forward for every strategy. But we did want to acknowledge that cities are major implementers of TDM strategies through their land use and their development controls. And the council plays a strong role in working with cities on these types of topics. And also counties and MN.ITs are strong implementers of transportation planning and corridor studies and highway projects and transit projects. And so they're also strong partners in implementing any TDM strategies. And so it's not that this implementation plan will be internal focused. It will definitely be focused on how our partners and how the region as a whole can advance these strategies. Next slide. So that's a general overview. We're planning to release the RFP this summer. We're getting actually really close to the next couple of weeks, probably, with anticipated contract to begin in the fall of this year, October, November-ish tentative target date, and it'll be about a 15 to 18-month study. And for those of you who are familiar with the regional 2050 plan schedule, this will really dovetail very nicely into our next update of the TPP. And so if there does need to be a significant shift or some new strategies that need additional work or additional funding, this will be set up nicely to be incorporated and rolled into the next plan. And the study overall will be an input into that overall planning process. I think the next slide is just my contact info. Yes. So that is all I have today. Welcome any questions that you guys may have.
Thanks, Cole. Are there any questions from council members? All right. Okay, if you do have any questions, make sure you reach out to Cole. So, all right, thank you very much, Cole.
Thank you.
All right, next we're on to the 2021 first quarter ridership report, and we have Eric Lind and John Harper here.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm John Harper, Manager of Contracted Transit Service within MTS. And with me today is Eric Lind, Manager of Analytics and Research at Metro Transit in Strategic Initiatives at Metro Transit. And we're here to present to you the 2021 first quarter ridership. Next slide, please. Normally in this presentation, we will compare the certain quarter of this year to the same quarter of last year. So that would be first quarter to first quarter, but because the pandemic started in essentially at the end of March, beginning of April, there's really not a lot to be learned there. And so we have a second short comparison of first quarter of this year to fourth quarter of 2020. And I'm going to go through the general comparisons here. Then Eric will go through the detailed example that he has, and then talk about key takeaways, and then take any questions from you. So on to the next slide, please. Just in summary here, this graph shows the makeup of the ridership, and the makeup is essentially the same between our different modes and types of service. Just the graph is a little bit shorter because the ridership is a little bit less in 2021 than it was in 2020. But the local service, the rail service, and the BRT are the workhorses, as they always are, and actually even more so in 2021 as we move through the pandemic period. Next slide, please. So this slide compares the first quarter of 2021 to the first quarter of 2020. And as we've talked about for a couple of quarters, the picture has not been good. As everyone knows, the picture has not been good. The ridership is down from 2020 significantly across all modes and all types of service, especially the express service. And the local ridership is doing comparatively better than the express service. And so this, as I say, just compares the pre-pandemic 2020 to the pandemic 2021. And next slide, please. And this slide breaks down the types of bus service, so the local and BRT service compared to the express service. And as Eric and I have presented in previous quarters, the local and the bus rapid transit service has done better comparatively than the express service. And that isn't a surprise. That's something we've been talking about for quite some time. So this is the first quarter 21 compared to the first quarter 2020. And then the next slide, please, compares the first quarter of 2021 to the fourth quarter of 2020. So this is a comparison within the pandemic period. And we are starting to see some rebounds in service. We are seeing in our workhorse services, it's pretty much a status quo for through the first quarter. We are seeing some return of ridership. I think in particular on our Metro Mobility service, our disabled community is starting to return to day training and habilitation, senior daycare, but also some general purpose travel within our Metro Mobility service. Transit Link is also showing a rebound. The van pool program is a very small program, so that 27% increase I would take with a grain of salt because the numbers are very small at this point. But we are starting to see the services begin to give us a rebound coming back out of the pandemic. Next slide, please. One comparison I'll make here is, and we talked about this last quarter as well, is the filling of the service availability within our dial-a-ride modes with service that isn't traditional. So within our Metro Mobility service, we began to provide trips for healthcare workers. On Transit Link, we did some essential worker trips and food shelf delivery. And you can see here those numbers. A couple comments I want to make about this type of service is you'll see that the numbers were increasing throughout the late fall and winter. And then in March of this year, the healthcare workers in particular, that number dropped off. We began to charge a fare for those rides. We were allowing free rides because they were considered critical workers. But in March of 2021, we began to charge a fare for those rides as we began to reinstate more of our fixed route service in the first quarter. And so you see that number drop off. We intend to eliminate the delivery of healthcare worker trips on Metro Mobility and go back to the program mission, which is delivering rides for the disabled community with the August pick. As we continue to ramp up our local service in particular, but our fixed route service, the opportunities for those healthcare workers to go back to the service that they originally were using becomes more and more available. And so we are, as I say, we are going to return to our mission within especially our Metro Mobility program. So we have been filling the gap to keep our contractors busy and provide an essential trip for these folks. So that's the big picture of where we're at. I will turn the presentation over to Eric to go through a more detailed example. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Madam Chair and council members, thanks for your patience in hearing us out tonight. Next slide, please. So I'm going to step through 3 years of data from 2019, and I want to make a few points about our ridership. The big point is I'm adding this context because neither year over year nor kind of last quarter to this quarter, they're not really satisfactory comparisons to kind of understand what's going on with the ridership for obvious reasons. So just wanted to point out a couple things in a sort of different form of the data. So what this is showing is from January to the end of December across 2019, the ridership in 3 categories. So the local bus category, light rail in the center, and express bus on the bottom. These are all Metro Transit ridership statistics. And I want you to notice a few things. First, just the levels. So if you kind of eyeball a line across, you could see that local bus is around 140,000 trips on a weekday. Light rail is something like 70 to 75. Express bus about 30,000 ridership. on a weekday. Second thing is that there's definite seasonality. So this moves up and down with respect to time of year. Probably the clearest place to look for that is in the summertime, June through August on the local bus, which of course includes lots of school service. You see a noticeable dip, and there's kind of other yearly patterns that are in here. If you look at the end of the year around holiday time, you can see the decreases happening. The last thing is it's just variable. You see a lot of ups and downs. There's in February 2019, or the end of January, beginning of February 2019 was one of those polar vortex times. You can see a big drop off in ridership on all types of service there. But otherwise, you see lots of squiggles. Basically, there are high ridership days, low ridership days. They're kind of going around a trend, but it's pretty variable. So if you go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to drop in 2020. So now the blue colored dots are the weekdays of 2020. And so first thing about the level, obviously the level changed. We've kind of been over that. Second thing about the seasonality and the variability, we see a lot less of both. So we do have some very noticeable dips around the beginning of June. That would be when we suspended service for a better part of a week after George Floyd was killed. Other than that, there's a light rail shutdown in there at the end of April in 2020 as well. But other than that, there's very little large movement in the ridership. It's pretty constant, and it's kind of remarkably constant for numbers that are on the order of 50,000 to 60,000 on the bus system, or 10 to 20,000 on the rail. They're very, very constant, and this indicates one, just steady ridership. So trip purposes are being sort of held constant. People are kind of doing the same thing on a day-to-day basis. But secondly, that we are probably what I would say is the core ridership constituency. It's not going to go much lower than this. And obviously, what we want to see going forward is for it to get higher on all these modes. So if you could put in the next slide, please. Here's the first quarter's worth of data for 2021. And so what you can see is, in general, it's pretty much at the same level. There was, it's hard to remember now, a pretty significant cold snap in February that did impact the local bus ridership, and it is a little bit weather susceptible, although not to the degree it would have been in 2019 with school closures and things like that, since most of the kids were already at home. What I wanted to emphasize is, as we go forward from here, we're kind of past where the quarter-to-quarter comparison is not working because of the transition from pre-COVID to COVID in 2020. Going forward, you want to look for those red dots and the red line to start creeping up towards that pre-pandemic ridership. And that's exactly what we're looking at on a much more frequent basis inside Metro Transit. We are watching this on a pretty regular basis. We are hoping to hint at some increases that we're already observing in the second quarter and continue to see that ridership build as travel patterns return to what they were before, or closer to that as we go forward. So next slide, please. So just a couple of takeaways on this short ridership report. First, this is the last quarter in which we're going to have a pre-COVID to post-COVID comparison, and from now on, all the quarter-to-quarter comparisons will be within and then after COVID, to the extent that anything will be after COVID. We did see some of these increases going from Q4 to Q1, although they're pretty modest on the fixed route side changes. They're pretty stable. And then we do expect things to start to pick up. The question is, how fast are they going to pick up? That's a question you all have. It's a question we have. What we're doing is preparing for it. We're using scenario planning. We're using kind of variable forecasting to understand how fast demand is going to change. We're looking at lots of different indicators, and I think I'll be back along with Adam Harrington next month to talk a little bit more about the types of data we're watching and what that means for our service planning. Two things to note that do impact ridership. First, we lifted self-imposed or kind of public health imposed limits on the capacity of buses at the end of May. So now we are back to not limiting ridership by our own volition. We still do have a federal mask mandate, however, and this could be a ridership impact for some. However, I believe recent data indicate that mask compliance is very high across the system. And so our riders are not really having trouble with that mandate. So I think with that, we will stand for any questions you have.
Thank you, Eric and John. Questions from council members. I've got one from council member Zarin. He says the previous TDM presentation showed how people of higher income were able to telecommute. Are there any stats that would show the typical income of North Star riders, and can we make a conclusion on these stats?
Madam Chair, council members, I don't have the numbers in front of me. We do have from the travel behavior inventory a pretty good idea of the relative composition of the ridership of North Star riders versus, say, local bus riders pre-COVID. So I could give you a concrete answer to that question at a later time. So we do have the statistics, and I think North Star riders in general, much like the express bus riders, are a large market segment that has been essentially telecommuting since the pandemic began. So that does explain a lot of the drop in ridership on that line.
Right, Councilmember Sterner.
Thank you, Chair Barber. I had some riders that typically do riding, and I know it's not your part to solve the issue, but I think some of the issues were that they weren't feeling comfortable and safe coming back on the transportation with just the riding and safety. And then also I had the Cedar Grove transit station was considered not clean, and that doesn't look as inviting. And I'm just wondering if it's more not just the COVID, but also is our transit locations, our buildings and our transportation safe and clean and inviting for people to take it again, or people that haven't taken it again that they feel comfortable on it. And has it been in the surveys, you know, when they survey?
Yes, Madam Chair and council members, that is absolutely true that it's not just the system that has to come back. It's going to be the experience for the customer. We're definitely focused on that. I don't know if Wes wants to weigh in on this, but I know as part of our Build Back Better approach that we're going to be talking about next month, we will spend a great deal of time talking about both safety and the overall kind of rider experience, in addition to the service levels that we're going to be bringing back.
Okay, thank you, Chair, Mr. Lynn. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, I'll just add that, as Eric said, that we're looking at how to bring ridership back. Where we have a whole initiative in doing that. Safety, facility condition is a big part of that. That's not new to us. We've been putting a lot of investment in safety. If you think about real-time cameras and the real-time information center and lot in cleanliness, and you consider the plastic seats, and I've added a number of facility maintenance workers to the payroll to address some of the facility issues we had. But I think it's fair to say that when you don't have a lot of travel of people in your facilities, that sometimes it gets actually worse instead of better, because behavior changes when there's not a lot of people there. And so we're dealing with some of those challenges in our system, and certainly we're trying to address it in the best way we can. I will also say that we're in the process of hiring more CSOs so that we can have a more visible official presence on transit without actually adding a lot more sworn officer presence, because we know that for some people, sworn officer presence doesn't give additional safety. It goes the other direction, and for others it does. But we think we can bring a greater official presence on transit by hiring more community service officers, and we're in the process of doing that now. But you've hit on a really good point. Reliability, service reliability, and service safety and security are the most important factors for our customers, and we're focused on that as well.
Okay, thank you, Manager Koister. Appreciate it.
All right. Any additional questions or comments? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, the graph that you showed between the buses and the rail and the express service was very interesting. Obviously not surprising that a lot of the express workers were working from home. And so that took a big dip down. And it also showed the dependency on buses with light rail and second. It would be nice to show the revenue in conjunction with those graphs, so that as we start to plan for the future, we can see what is going to happen to the revenue, especially looking at the express service, which was more more affected by COVID-19. So I'd be very curious to see what happens and watching these statistics going forward.
Madam Chair, Councilmember, I'll say one quick thing, which is that we did work very closely with Ed Petrie and his group in finance to actually take some of what we could draw out of the patterns we were seeing in the data to forecast ridership, and then he was able to translate those into budgetary forecasts. So I think we are really closely aligned in figuring out how do we use the observed ridership to kind of project where we're going to be at, but I can let others chime in on that too.
Madam Chair, this is Wes Koister again, and I'll just also mention to Councilmember Chambliss that we track the revenue each month, and we can do we can provide the information that you're requesting. I'll say that first of all. When we look at comparisons in 2020, it gets a little complicated because, for example, we went through that period of time where we were having boardings on the back of the bus and there wasn't a lot of fare revenue collections. And so there were so many moving parts in 2020 that it's really hard to view it as useful information other than it's something we want to leave. And that's kind of where we're at right now. But we have an idea what it takes to bring people back. We have an idea the limitations of bringing people back because we're going to be dependent on certainly how employers respond to their employees in terms of those patterns. But we also saw very clearly that we provide an essential ride to so many people during the pandemic. I mean, we certainly, like you mentioned, the local bus and the arterial BRT performed so much better than the other systems performed, and that really says that's also not only the foundation of our system, but it is the foundation service for people who truly rely on our service, that local bus route. So we're willing to provide. I just want to say that we want to be responsive in providing information that you would like us to show, and we've learned a lot. And one thing we've learned is that we'd like to move away from that experience as fast as possible.
And Madam Chair, this is Ed Petrie. One thing I will also add, Council Member, is the fact is that when we built the 2021 budget, we worked very closely with strategic initiatives. We actually broke the budget, the ridership down between local, suburban, local, BRT, express, light rail, commuter rail, and just really broke it down into much more detail than what we had historically done. So that way we could watch the patterns of the different groups, so we can watch that very closely going forward.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any follow-up, Reva? Okay.
Thanks for, the key is to just kind of watch the patterns, like you said.
Yep.
Thank you.
I see Councilmember Zarin had a follow-up question on North Star. He says he inquired about a Twins game service over the weekend. So what metric do we use to determine if service should be reinstated or something like that for like a special event?
Madam Chair, I'll say that North Star brings a unique story, and that is that not only is it down 95% during the pandemic, actually a little more, but we have an Anoka County that's not paying us for that service. And they haven't paid us since July of 2020 when they were still under agreement to pay us. So they haven't paid the last 2 quarters of the 2020 agreement, and they've refused to sign agreements going forward. So it's really hard to talk about, and they represent, I believe, 37% of the payment of that subsidized share of the costs. And when you have a payer that represents 37% of the payment of subsidized costs, It's and we're which is not paying, and it's creating cash flow issues. It's really the discussion about opening for events becomes a different kind of discussion at that point.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you, Eric and
So,
John.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yep. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead,
Madam
Councilmember Zering.
Chair, this question would be to redirect that a little bit. So there is no to open up for, is it my understanding, without funding from the Anoka County Commissioners, there is no metric for opening up the North Star for ball games or other events.
Madam Chair and Council Member Zarin, my response to that today would be that the first order of business is to get paid by the funders for the service that we're providing before we can talk about a metric to open up for North Star. And I think that North Star service is a little unique, but overall, I believe, and Eric can correct me if I'm wrong, that event ridership is about 1% of our ridership. We think about it as a big deal, and we want to provide the service to the community. That's a big deal. But in terms of, if you look at raw numbers, it's 1% of our total ridership in a given year is event ridership. Sometimes I think that figure surprises people because it happens all at once in about an hour or so time.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? All right. Before we adjourn, I won't keep you long because you've been hanging in there pretty long, although I think we've probably broke a record for that long of an agenda. So, which is good. But a couple of things. So, one, I want to thank Nick Thompson for his service to this committee at MTS. So he will be starting his new job in the Deputy General Manager role on the 28th, which is the date of our next Transportation Committee. So we'll still see him, but I know that through my work in the committee and through MTS and with TAB that he has been a great partner through it all. So I'm very happy he has this new opportunity. We're going to miss him. I know we're in able hands with Amy, and but it's I do want to thank him for his work with all of us. Then I just wanted to share. We hear a lot of stories about transit and different things, and we don't always hear the good things. My son made it through his second vaccine in his 2 weeks waiting period, and when asked what he wanted to do, he wanted to take the train to go see a Twins game. So we did that last Tuesday, and it was an amazing experience. Wasn't the best game, but it was wonderful to take the train. We had a great experience on the train and with the transit system, and it was just great to be back out there. So I think sometimes we don't, especially like Metro Transit doesn't always get recognized for some of the good things, but I can say that they made one kid's day. So thank you. And with that, anybody have anything else? All right, then we can be adjourned, everyone. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Take care.
Good
Take
night.
care.